mom approached me and asked me to put a eulogy together for Grandpa. I'm not gonna lie, this is not an easy task. Grandpa was a great guy. He's a great man, and it's appropriate to have a top-notch eulogy with a top-notch presenter. I'm sorry, Grandpa. They picked me to do this. Grandpa has shed his physical shell like a glove to a hand. He no longer has MS, and he is no longer limited by his elderly figure. I can't help but think about the 1980s classic movie with Patrick Swayze, Ghost. I can see Grandpa, trying to find a way to get my attention, but only to point out the flaws in my punctuation or my lacking ability to stay on topic. In my mind, even through death itself can't stop Grandpa from making sure everything goes right. See, Grandpa was a mentor, a motivator, a husband, a brother, an uncle, a grandpa, and even a great-grandfather. Grandpa Cornell was one of a kind. When I think of Grandpa, I think of John's 30th birthday surprise party. Grandpa went missing. Nobody could find him. His car was in the parking lot, but his scooter was gone. And he was nowhere to be found for a good 45 minutes. And here you hear down the hall, just the buzzing of the scooter, and he comes in, and he reappears with buttons, pins, pens, shirts, hats, bumper stickers, and a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. There was an election event going on down the hall in a different suite, and Grandpa was ransacking the whole place for goods. He's the only man that I know of that would pull up to a house that was throwing away wood by himself, honk the horn repeatedly, lure out an unsuspecting individual, then schmooze him into loading it into his van. He probably used the same tactic in acquiring the wonderful bird bath that Grandpa got Doug. Doug, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
The bird bath was disguised as a 1970 pink bathtub. Doug said, "Don't even take it out of the van. Don't even take it." But the thing about Grandpa is when you really look beyond what happened and you look at why it happened, you see Grandpa was ultimately, again, just thinking about another individual. Grandpa, in my eyes, was a social genius. A man that would make it nearly impossible to get out of Rosewood, South Haven in under 5 minutes. Just because he was a local celebrity, and he would make stops at every table and conversate, even if we were behind schedule for the day. He was a man that had such a positive influence on people's lives that when I worked for the family carpet cleaning business, I would be cleaning carpets at the Rosewood, South Haven, and Old Man John would go on and on and on about how good of a man Grandpa was. But Grandpa wasn't just a good man, he was an awesome individual. This is a man that through the deepest parts of my own family divorce would pull me close and with a big smile, and he would say, and I quote, "Nothing's going to happen to my grandson, or Grandpa's going to kick some ass." The soft medicinal phrases that he spoke were light years ahead of any modern day antidepressant. His humor was never too sharp, and the placement of his one-liners sometimes seemed surgical. Grandpa was never an angry man. Matter of fact, I can pinpoint the only time I believe in my life Grandpa was legitimately upset with me. Actually, me and Mallory. It was when Mallory and I were around the ages of 6 or 7, and we stole the keys to Grandpa's RV that was parked outside our South Haven house. We liked to play house in there, so after Mom made us pancakes, Mal and I slipped out the back door and with the keys to the RV and got syrup everywhere inside the RV. You remember that, Grandma? Grandpa was really legitimately upset with me, but even at his most frustration, he didn't yell, he didn't scream. He just grabbed me by the arm, looked at me firmly, and asked me, what is wrong with you? And unfortunately, Grandpa, until this day, I can't give you logical answers. Grandpa Cornell had the amazing ability to mystify many people. I think it'd be safe to say he liked to pull the surprise factor on many. From doing calculus problems in his head to solving impossible trick puzzles in minutes, Grandpa always had a way to convey to you and make you convince you to suspend your disbelief and prove to you where there's a will, there's a way. In my opinion, one of the most amazing Cornellisms that Grandpa ever pulled off was the way that he defied the laws of ancestry. This is a man that has no living bloodline, but yet acquired nieces, nephews, 6 great-grandchildren, over 10 grandchildren, 4 children, and a partridge in a pear tree. I remember when I was young, I found out at a young age that I had a biological grandfather, and that Grandma and Grandpa got married before I was born. And at such a young age, this was also around the time when I found out that the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus wasn't real. So, needless to say, I had some trust issues as a kid. When my mother and her brothers were growing up, I've always been told that their father was never around. When putting Cornell into the view of things now that he's passed, I like to think of it like this. He may not have been there when you guys were growing up, but he sure as hell has made up for the lost time. He is your father. I mean, what man in his right mind would live a bachelor lifestyle his whole life, marry a wonderful lady in his late 50s, only to legally adopt her own 4 adult children if he didn't love them as his own? He is your father. And he was a great father. One thing I love about Grandpa is that he always wanted to verbally communicate to you his love by saying, "You know how much you mean to Grandpa?" Or, "Do you know how much I love you?" Or, "That smile makes my day." Or, "Judy was the best thing that ever happened to me." I heard him personally say that multiple times. Judy's the best thing that ever happened to me. And Grandma, I want to take a moment to say, growing up hearing that, I never really knew how lucky he was. I just thought he was saying that because you made him sandwiches whenever he needed it. That's all I saw. Judy, I need some soup. Judy, I need some sandwiches. Judy, I need some drinks. So, I'm a firm believer that true love shines through the darkest parts of our lives. And when Grandpa was in the transition period between the physical medium and the afterlife, that bond between you and Grandpa never faded, Grandma. Didn't even flicker. I'm confident enough to say, Grandma, that if I can find a woman that can give me 1/8 of the respect and love that you gave Grandpa, I'd be a happy man. But from what I hear, is that Grandpa was a closet Casanova. Did you guys know that a couple days after Grandpa found out about his muscle disease, found out that it was incurable, it was Mother's Day. Even through the worst of times, when Grandpa was barely eating, uncomfortable, and good chances and a lot of pain, Grandpa gave Uncle Jack money to go down to the store to pick up Grandma flowers and a card for Mother's Day. He even signed it himself when he was losing with his hand. Signed it himself. That's the kind of man I want to be someday.
You are that man, Devin.
When Grandpa proposed to Grandma at Niagara Falls, I hear that she never saw it coming. They went up there in the fall, and Grandma says, "Why are we going up in there in the fall? It's freezing, I'm chilling down to the bone." And he insisted, so they went up there in their RV. Grandpa and Grandma toured the falls, Then after 7 years of Grandma living with him, never expecting to see a wedding ring, Grandpa pulled Grandma close and said, "Judy, I want to ask you for a favor." And right when she was thinking about him asking her to cook her dinner, he says, "Judy, will you be my wife?" And we obviously know what the answer was to that. Completely took her by surprise and provided Grandma with the happiest day of her life, their wedding. Grandpa just had a knack at sustaining relationships. The amount of love and respect he gave was unmatched and will be missed by many. But one relationship that amazes me is that of his brother Alex and him. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I believe to give an accurate description of these two, we're going to need all 1,000 of them. I gave you Cornell and Alex. Did you say it's true? From the inside jokes to the mustache on Grandpa, this, I believe, is the best way to describe these two. You see both these Muppets mumbling on back and forth to each other, laughing at themselves at inside jokes. And I believe as goofy as funny as these characters are, Jim Henson pegged you and Cornell to a T.
You're gonna burn for that.
Grandpa's gonna visit you tonight.
Uncle Alex, I personally want you to know that I always admired your relationship with Grandpa, you and Grandpa. You know, I too have a brother, Cody. And if Cody and I can recreate just a smidge of the continuity you and Grandpa showed for each other over and over again, I believe it would make Cody and I an unstoppable force, like you and Grandpa. And that's the truth. Some of my most fondest memories is of you two when we would get into these overzealous theoretical scientific discussions about existence itself with a dash of solar planetary functioning. You remember those conversations we'd get into? I hope you know that being that young and being around these two super brains invigorated intelligent thinking on my behalf. I also want you to know that I have always viewed you as an uncle, Uncle Alex. And I always used to look forward to seeing you and Aunt Linda come out around for Christmas. You were family when Grandpa Cornell was around, and you're still family now that he has passed. And I would like to take that on the behalf of everybody in the family to tell you that.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Plus, I'm taking advanced mathematics next year. On my sleeve to ace that class. I would take that on behalf of the family also. To speak to you and tell you that. We understand that Cornell was the last blood family you have, but you also have a family with us, and nothing is going to change that, Uncle Alex. At all. Nothing. Bottom line, we weep for ourselves. But Grandpa's no longer in pain. We weep for the loss of a companion, but he's always with us at heart. Grandpa's passing was a little more to me than just the loss of a grandfather. It really changed my view of life. I want to be a man like Grandpa. By the time I leave this physical realm, if I can have made just as much of a positive influence on people's lives as Grandpa has done in his lifetime, then I would pass a happy man. To fill those kinds of shoes for all of us is a huge task, but we have the rest of our lives to work at it. I want to personally, and from my family, thank all of you for showing up here today. Your support to my family is much appreciated. And let us rejoice in the memories of Cornell Spornick, Grandpa, in a happy and loving way, the same way that he would want it to be. Thank you.
Good job, brother.